Hello and welcome to a brief demonstration of Receta, the system designed for nutraceutical and vitamin and supplement manufacturers to aid them in running their business, primarily for small to medium-sized enterprises. The system as a whole is capable of managing virtually the entire business operation, including customer management, production management, stock management, purchase order, supplier management, and ingredient and finished product management, as well as dispatching, invoicing, and lots of other features therein. I'll quickly log into this and hopefully we can see where we go from there. This is obviously a demo copy, so I'm using some demo login information. Okay, this is the dashboard page which you'll be greeted with every time you log into the system, and it briefly comprises of some overall statistics for how the business is doing either that day, that hour, etc. You can quickly see that along the top we have navigation points, which I'll get to very shortly. You have your logout area and a global search where you can find everything that you're looking for in one place. Below that we have a ticker tape which shows you some general statistics for the business. These could be the number of sales orders raised today, the number of productions added that day, etc. Below that we have some graphs which outline various targets that the business is trying to achieve. This could be information that you could pass perhaps to your sales team and or your production staff to enable them to try and reach higher points in the business that you're looking for them to get to. Below that we have some overall alerts. These alerts vary and can change from time to time and alert different members or different sections of your business to work that they need to complete. For example, this is all to do with the quotations, where they are, whether the customer's accepting them, whether we need price alterations, etc. This section is everything to do with orders, ETAs that are coming up that you need to fulfill, production alerts, purchase alerts general. Don't worry too much about the individuals of this. There are other videos coming which will go through these in more detail. If we look along the top now at the navigation, you can see that all of these sections are all of the features that Receta can handle. Briefly, obviously the customers is customer management. Sales are to do with managing your sales right from inception right the way through to dispatch and invoicing. Production manages all of the items required for production and the actual production itself, which I'll get to shortly. Suppliers is pretty much self-explanatory, and purchase orders, which are linked to suppliers. Reports and logs, again, we'll get to them in a little while, and some of the admin tasks that you can perform in general with Receta. If we just go to customers and add, what I'm showing you here is an example of the type of form and the layout that you would be expected to fill in to add certain features to Receta. In this case, we're adding a customer, and you can see we've got several different areas or different fields that we are asking you to fill in to enable us to give as much information into Receta as possible. General information such as business names, titles of the contacts, etc. We've also got a number of switch fields here. Don't worry again too much about the specifics of these. Suffice to say that your decisions here, which can be edited in the future, but your decisions here can impact on various other areas of the business, such as their credit rating, their ability to place sales orders, etc. If we could quickly go to find a customer, you can see there's only one customer in here at the minute. We can see the last time we had invoices off them, the last order they placed, etc. But if we quickly go into one, this dashboard is the customer dashboard and will be the same for every customer. Briefly, it gives you some of the information you may have just entered, the account information, email address, etc. You also have the location on Google Maps and some general information that you've already stored. Also, you can have additional contacts set up within this customer, as well as individual delivery addresses and a series of notes, which could be internal information that you need your staff to be aware of when dealing with this particular customer. Those notes can also proliferate throughout their customers' quotations and sales orders, so your staff are aware at all times of any criteria that you need them to be aware of when dealing with a customer. Back up towards the top, here we have a list which is populated dynamically. A C-prod, which I'll get to in a little while, but essentially a C-prod is the finished product that you would sell to the customer. Generally this would be a number of capsules or tablets in an outer container. By printing this list, you can provide that to the customer, and it's essentially a list of all the individual specification products that you have agreed with the customer and their pricing. The customer can then use this for reordering purposes. Instead of needing to describe their product to you every single time, they can just quote a particular reference number and you'll know exactly which product they are referencing. Here we have some graphs and some basic information such as the profit margins that you're operating with this customer, your sales totals, etc. And finally below you have any outstanding quotations that are currently on file for this customer and the sales orders. If we look at the sales section, you can see that we have inquiries, quotations, sales orders, dispatches, invoices and offers. With the exception of the offers area, this navigation point is the general flow through your business that an inquiry would go through. Generally, an inquiry would come in, and in the past you may have had to store that in an email inbox somewhere, or write it down on a piece of paper, or store it on an Excel sheet. And now you can actually input that as an inquiry into the system. Put all the information here that the customer has requested, including their purchase order number if they've provided it at that stage. And you can set some statuses which for now don't really matter, we'll go over them in a later date. If the customer then decides that they want to go to the quotation stage, you can start to add a quotation. So let's say we find the customer. I know they're called tests, so you can see there it starts to fill that in automatically for me. What I can then do at the point of quotation is I am looking to try and get one of these two into my basket, and the basket being effectively what the customer is asking for in their quotation. One of the easiest things I can do is pick one of the existing finished products I have on file and say that the customer's ordering 100 of those, and it adds them in. However, if the customer's wanting to order something brand new that we've never quoted for before, provided you already have the formula on file, which I'll get to later, you can create a product on the fly by entering all of these form fields here. And essentially what you're doing is telling the system how many of a certain capsule you'd like in the product, which particular bottle, which particular lid, label, etc. When all of that is entered, if you use this View Pricing Recommendations button, you get a pop-up screen which you can use to see the costs of making the product in terms of material costs, which obviously I haven't put anything in, so the cost is zero. But more importantly, you can also ask it to automatically help you calculate the actual cost for making the product in terms of the labour charges. Now, when you first get your copy of Receta, you will go through a process of setting up machines in the system so it knows which machines you operate, and you will tell it the hourly rate that you want to run at that machine and its production capacity. Based upon that, it can then work out the costs of your labour per unit, which in this case is quite high. From that, it can extrapolate up and give you some price examples that it thinks you should be selling the items for to maintain your profit margins shown here. These profit margins can be amended to suit your business. If you prefer to manipulate a price to suit a particular profit margin, you can enter the profit margin here and the price will change to reflect, or vice versa. Either way, whichever one you choose to use, click Use this price and this would appear here. Again, as you can see, you can add price bands. What you can then do is add that to the quotation and the quotation would be saved. When the quotation is saved, you can then go to a page which will show you what the quotation is, the profit margins, etc., which you've just previously saved, but you can also then elect to email the quotation directly through Receta and the customer will get a copy of the quotation in PDF form as well as copies of all the documentation automatically for the items in the quotation. The documentation will include things such as the formulation certificate and the specification sheet for things such as which bottle, which lid, which label, etc. If we look at sales orders, adding a sales order, which would be an actual order rather than a quotation, is virtually identical to adding a quote with the exception that you can't create products. This would be for orders where the customer has already said, look, I know exactly what I'm after, can I have this please? If you're trying to create a sales order on the back of a quotation, you can actually go straight into the quotation and click a single button and it will do all of this work for you and make a sales order on the back of your quotation straight away. If we look at an example sales order, We can see here, this is the sales order that I previously added. I realise there's quite a lot of information on this page. Don't worry, it may look a little bit overwhelming, but it is all straightforward when you go through it. Effectively, if we look here, we can see that this sales order was for 100 of this particular finished item. There are still 100 outstanding, so we haven't sent any yet. This information here is our profit margins, our cost per unit, profit per line, etc. And all of these individual coloured boxes are actions that we can perform on this sales order line to get it through the system. We can update its individual status. We can check the status of individual materials within the finished item. Here we can see that we don't have stock of anything, so we definitely need our purchasing manager to be buying some items for us. We can also check the ingredients that go into the finished capsule and see what we would need for producing them. We can send items to production if we need to make the finished product or the final saleable product, the C-prod. We can update ETAs on the customer for the customer and actually send ETAs to the customer automatically via email. We can say whether we're printing the label in-house if you have that capacity in your business, or if we're sending the label print out, outsourcing that to our label printer. We can switch something to ignore our stock levels, and finally we can produce the documentation automatically. I'll show you this documentation now, simply because this documentation here is telling us that this finished product, this C-prod, has these items in it. It has 60 of a particular capsule, has a particular bottle, a particular lid, a particular label. Now, one of the key things to bear in mind is if we went ahead and made some changes to this particular product, such as changing the bottle type or the lid type, when we came back to generate this paperwork, it would have automatically changed for us. We don't no longer have to have separate copies that we update manually, stored on Word on a shared drive somewhere, for example. The same applies to the formulation sheet. In fact, the same applies to every single piece of documentation that the system generates. If you make a change in one place, if that information is relevant to a document when you generate that document, it will be automatically pulled across. Down the right hand side we can see various points which help us gauge how well we are doing with our sales order. If we start at the bottom, if the customer has provided us with a file, such as a purchase order for example for these items, we can upload this here so we've got a history of exactly what the customer ordered. No longer do we have to ring the customer up to find out what they ordered, or look through a particular inbox email to find what the customer said they wanted. You can upload the file here and check back on it at any point. We can also see purchase orders which have been placed in the system, which may be linked to certain ingredient requirements or certain bottle requirements, for example. We can see any dispatches we've already made against the sales order, any invoices we've already created against this order, any pro forma invoices, linked productions, and finally general notes. As and when we perform actions within this sales order, the notes system will be automatically updated with a full log of everything that's happened to this sales order. You can also update that manually by adding extra lines if you wish. When an item is ready to be dispatched, we have some in stock, it will automatically drop into the dispatch area. I will show you that, but there won't be anything in it for now. Then you would go through a process of dispatching very similar to how you would add a product into a quotation or a sales order. It's very straightforward. When a dispatch was created, that would automatically create an invoice for the customer. It would already take into account any pro forma payments as well. No more making manual invoices, no more tracking manual payments. It's all done automatically. Offers we'll leave for now, but that's essentially a way of discounting certain lines on sales orders without having to alter the actual price of the item. Quickly now, if we move into the production area, for production we can see there's quite a number of navigation points. What we'll do is we'll deal with this in turn. In terms of managing our stock and our materials, Receta breaks everything down into 4 distinct categories. Materials, categorized with an RM prefix, are items which have been bought in. They are provided for by your customer in free issue. These are items which you would generally use in the production of other items that you would then go on to sell. Formulas are simply the finished mix of an item. That's before it becomes encapsulated. This will be categorized with an REC or REC prefix. Capsules are one or more of the finished mix in an encapsulated form with an outer shell or a tablet, and these will be categorized with an FP prefix. Finally, the finished saleable item, which generally would be X amount of the capsule or tablets in an outer container with a lid and a label possibly, will be categorized with the prefix of CPROD. You may have seen that CPROD prefix in certain other pages I've just shown you. We'll get to these last 3 points in a little while. If we go to add a material, again, if you remember this is an RM, this is something that we are buying in, we can set certain fields. You'll see this is very similar to how we might have added a customer previously. However, some of the key things to bear in mind, if we say, for example, that we knew that this particular item we were buying in was an ingredient, and we're setting up on the system, you can see that when I selected ingredients there, an extra series of fields became available. These extra fields aren't just there simply for notification purposes. They do have a bearing on certain other areas. If, for example, we load the purity rating, that can help us when we are actually going to the position of adding a new formula to the system. It will help us to automatically calculate the exact number of milligrams of finished material we need to put into the system in order to get a certain number of active ingredients in our finished formula. Things such as directly compressible, if it's measured in IU, measured in micrograms, etc., all again directly impact on other areas of Receta. Other fields, such as being EU approved, for example, will also appear on certain documentation, so it's clear to your customers if they can or cannot sell the item in and around the EU. If we have allergens against this particular material, we can set them here. And we can also set some of the individual items, such as the weight of the item, the starting cost, etc. We can also set the initial supplier and the initial supplier price and reference if we wish. Here we can add some initial stock levels if we wanted to. We can set whether it appears automatically on certain reports, and we can set the colours, etc. Again, all of these fields have bearings within Receta in other sections. If we quickly look at one of the materials that I've got set up, you can see that we've got several already set up, each one in different sections. So this is a capsule shell, that's a bottle, that's a lid, that's a label, and that's an actual ingredient. If we look at this ingredient, we can see all of these fields are already filled in for this one. Then we can see that for this one we've set that it has certain allergens against it. We've set the price when it was last checked as an actual price that we sell it out at, etc. Now by default, Receta will help you maintain your pricing by only allowing certain items to be costed within a certain threshold. For example, if you try and add a particular material to a new formula and the price hasn't been checked within the last 90 days, it will flag up a warning. We can also see stock levels, batch stock levels. We can put things into quarantine if, for example, you found a problem with a particular material. You can also upload an image and MSDS documentation if you have it from your suppliers. Finally, in this side, if you have any other materials which may be used as an alternative instead of this one, you can create them here, and this will help you when creating a new formula. Instead of having to buy a particular new material that you may not have in stock, you can elect to use a different one if you prefer. On the right hand side, you can see things such as the movement log against this item, what incomings and outgoings you've had, usage reports, what items it's used in. In this case, we can see that this material is used in a particular formula, which we'll see shortly. What production options we have, and price and purchase history. We've never bought it, so we don't have any, but generally that might be a graph and some pricing information. If we now said to moving forward to add a formula to the system, we might say, let's say we'll call this formula tier. I want to make a brand new capsule. That's not a capsule shell, this is an encapsulated product. Now it's asking me, what is the capsule shell? Now I know there's only one at the minute, so I'll just start typing in that and it'll put it in. Here what I'm trying to do is say which ingredients I want in my finished capsule. Now in this case there's only one. I want to add that. There could be several hundred here, and you can narrow it down with this field here. And here I could say, look, I want 100 milligrams of this particular item in my finished capsule. If you remember, we briefly talked previously about the active levels. Here we can elect to see if we want this to help us calculate based upon the purity level, and it will help us by automatically calculating these areas for us. We can also see such things as where it will help us calculate the amount of dical phosphate we may need to put in if this is a tablet, or the amount of filler or lubricant we may need to put in to have this running safely through our machines. Finally, if we want to, we can elect to see if there are any existing formulas in our copy of Receta which match this formulation. What this can do is help you streamline your process and stop having to make a brand new formula for a customer when you may already have something very, very similar already on file which you can sell to the customer more easily. Here we can see the maximum capacity of the capsule. In this case it's 0 because I haven't set it, but we can see how close we are to filling that capsule. And finally some other information such as costing information, whether or not we need to assign this exclusively to a customer, whether or not overall it's EU approved. If we find this particular demo formula which we've already put in, you can see here again we're in a similar dashboard territory where we can see lots of information. In terms of formulas, you can see here one of the key things is that we can have a checking system built in, whereby any formula is not allowed to be used for production until it has been checked both internally and perhaps externally. This could be a particular site manager, whereas this could be your overall manager, so with a checking level. Here again we can see some of the documentation it will automatically produce. We can upload density check results if you have that facility. We can store production spec notes, which I'll get to in a little while. We can see stock levels and we can see the method. Now, one of the key things to bear in mind with Receta over and above standard operations is that when you are making a product in Receta and you say you wish to produce it, you can set something called the method. And the method is a series of steps that you need your staff to go through one after the other and confirm that they've gone through it in order to produce the item. And what this does is it allows you to maintain a sense of quality about each production. You know that the production is going to be made in exactly the same way every single time because the staff have to follow the steps. You can set this by just quickly remove this existing one. We can click add a method, and what it does is it will automatically offer us some possible steps that we can ask our staff to perform. Generally the first step will be to weigh out the material. Here it would show all the materials in question. In this case there's only one, so we want to weigh out that material. We may wish to add a miscellaneous step like do we may wish to add a time step. And finally we may wish to say what do we do when it's complete. Again, don't worry too much, I know I'm whizzing through this, it's just to give you an overview. Now, when it came to production, those steps would be displayed on the page one after the other, and your staff would have to click to say that they've confirmed they've completed each step one after the other. This gives you this excellent sense of quality and maintains the same procedures time after time without needing to hand clipboards around or ask your staff to read anything in particular. As long as you've got a PC nearby, a Mac, a mobile phone or any tablet device or touchpad close by, they can use this right next door to their machine and maintain the sense of quality that we're looking for. If we went to capsules and tablets, you can see there quite quickly that you can't add a capsule. That is purely because you added at the same point adding a formula. But we'll go into this formula. The formula is very similar to the rec that we had there, the recipe. So you've got general information. You have again the production notes and the methods that we may wish to use, quarantine, stock levels, etc. Complete products, you can elect to add a complete product which is exactly the same form as when you were adding it directly in a quotation, or if we're going to find one, which is here, see it's very similar look and feel with the exception that we have some other information here. We have our costing information that we may have previously stored. We have the price banding information that we're selling this product for. You can even set price bands per customer if you wish. The method in this case has been stored, and again we can see what's in it, 60 of a particular capsule, a bottle, a lid and a label. Again, this is the same documentation that was previously generated as part of the quotation or the sales order. All comes from one source. And finally we can upload a photo of it if we wish to send that to the customer for quality checking purposes. One thing I should add at this stage is that for the materials, for things such as labels, bottles and lids, you can upload photos of them into Receta, and what that will do is when it comes to reordering, those photos or artwork in the case of labels can be automatically attached to the purchase orders for those materials and sent to your supplier so you can make sure you get exactly the product that you're asking for. Quickly go to production schedule. Production schedule is a very simplistic calendar highlighting all the jobs that you have on file, and you can drag and drop and move and expand and contract the time and etc. You can see the legend here identifies all the different key points to do with each job. If you wanted to produce a job, you'd click on it and you have various different buttons which appear or change or even remove themselves depending upon where the production is. In this case I'm at the very beginning, so it's asking me to allocate stock. When I click to allocate stock, unfortunately I don't appear to have any stock of any of the 4 items I need, so I'm unable to allocate at this stage. However, if those items were available, I would then be able to allocate it, print a picking list and carry on with my production following the method steps we'd previously just identified. Stock management area, which is basic stock management such as being able to transfer goods in and out when they're not coming as part of a purchase order. We can move things into quarantine, or we can directly edit stock in a particular location. The tools are all very quick little simplistic tools designed to help us maintain the best production environment we can. Things such as planning our material usage across several productions, planning our material usage across several productions of finished product, and the recipe match wizard that we talked about previously when we were trying to find matches for existing formulas that we were trying to put in. Through the rest of these quite quickly. Suppliers are exactly what you'd expect. It's a particular list of all your suppliers where you can store all the information about them, including their location, any contacts you have. You can assign certain bought-in materials to them directly. You can see the purchase orders you've placed against them and the quote request you've asked them to provide information on. Purchase orders, if we choose to add a purchase order, we'll say that this is very similar to how a quotation or a sales order is added. Again, we're adding things into our basket, and here we can elect to give the supplier extra information. We can see what price we may have paid previously, and we can then check that against our supplier's costings to make sure we're not having been given a hidden price increase, etc. With any purchase orders on file, which would appear here, you can then, when an item comes in, receive it and go through a full receiving process, uploading COAs and any other documentation provided, and it will automatically add into the stock for use in productions, etc. Lastly, the two sections, reports and logs, give you an overview of everything that's happened within the business, logs of production, deliveries that have come in and out, production, dispatch and book out of items. We can see stock reports, such as our overall stock report, any items which have expired. If we clicked on that, for example, we can then choose to see any items which have already expired. There isn't any, so that's okay. What we can then do is use that so that we don't have any stock on file which we shouldn't be using. Trend report shows where we are with certain RMs in terms of our purchasing and usage, and we can elect to use that for future buying prospects. The same with our finished product RFPs. Monetary reports give you ideas in terms of the profit and loss of the business. See such things as all of the sales margins, the invoices generated, any purchase order values, etc. You can then see stock reports and various audit reports, such as how much you spend with certain suppliers and customers. You can export all your transactional history straight to Sage, and you've got a document store for any other general documents such as quality issues, etc. you wish to store on the system. No longer do you have to go hunting around on a particular user's machine or shared drive. Finally, in the admin section, you have various different tweaks and settings you can apply to Receta to make it run how your business wants to. For example, we can click here and add new users. If we go into your account, you can set things such as who receives certain notifications within the business when certain operations happen. So whenever a new quotation is placed on the system, do we need to let a certain user know? When a sales order has been edited, do we need to let a certain user know? When a new production is added, again, do we need to let anybody know? And this will automatically happen, all of these individual notifications, without you needing to click any buttons. We can then set our profit margins, etc. And if we're integrated with certain features such as MailChimp, we can put our information here and the working hours that we run at, and that impacts on the schedule. Material information, we can set up additional material categories and material colors. Purchase orders, we can set up some defaults. General, we can set up some stock locations. Business sectors, the machinery that we may wish to use, and shipping types. I have whizzed through that. Obviously, I appreciate that, and I know there's an awful lot to it. I will do some future videos outlining certain sections in more detail, but hopefully this gives you a very good overview of exactly how Receta works. Thank you very much for your time.